Well, hello, everyone. We'll give one more minute just to let folks join us whose clocks may be not exactly calibrated to their computer, which includes me. I have to keep updating my clocks because apparently none of my clocks are as fast as my computer clock. So like every 2 weeks, they're like a minute or two off. It's very bizarre. So, all right. So again, welcome everyone. We're just going to wait a few more moments to let some folks join us who did stop in the proverbial virtual lobby and grab their overpriced Sutter home, the little hotel mini bar style. There we go. All right. Well, hello, Amelia Gallup.
Hello, Doug Wendt.
All right. And hello to everyone who's joining us today. We are so excited to have you. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us for automating your business processes with HubSpot. I want to emphasize a couple of key things as we get started. First of all, the exits to the theater on the left, on the right. No. Couple of key items. Number one, if you have a question, you can feel free to type it in the Q&A box. We'll be following the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you haven't been to a Zoom webinar before, the icons and the menu items there are at the bottom of the black box. Q&A, you can just type your question there. We'll see it. If it's a question we can answer in the moment, we certainly don't mind. We'll be happy to. If it's something that we know we're going to address a little bit later, we might take a few minutes until we get there. But feel free to pop your questions in there. The other thing I want to mention is that we are recording this webinar. We will be sharing a recording of it both on our website and via email to each of you, as well as on YouTube. So if you have a great time at this webinar and you're like, you know, it's like the equivalent of a new Netflix show, you've just got to binge watch it with your friends, you will be able to do that and you won't even have to pay. So that's the other thing I want to mention. The last item is we are very time sensitive and aware here. We will end the program at precisely 1 o'clock, if not a minute early. So try to give you at least 30 seconds back in your day. We know everybody is spending a lot of time in meetings, whether it's in person or virtual. So thank you again for taking time out of your day to join us today. All right, Amelia, you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. And thank you, Chris Moore, for the shout out in the
Yes,
Q&A.
I saw that, Mr. Moore. So for those
some
of you,
big shoes to follow up. So.
Awesome. We are also excited. So today's topic is automating your business process in HubSpot, or processes. Before we dig in, I'd like to learn a little bit about Amelia and share a little bit about myself and talk about how we at Wendt Partners realized that we need to step up our game in terms of evolving how we use HubSpot. So first, Amelia, welcome to today's program.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Doug. I'm glad to be here and see you in front of everyone instead of just one-on-one like usual.
That's spectacular. I agree. This is fun. So Amelia, tell us a little bit about, your background before HubSpot. How did you discover the world of HubSpot? And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, it's kind of been a fun journey. I immediately following college, I went full bore into a career in emergency response management. So I worked basically as a firefighter and an EMT full time on a couple different ambulance services, and also volunteered for my local fire department. I've pulled the cat out of a tree. The cat wasn't happy about it, but also done a little bit of burning building stuff and some things on the water and under the water and all kinds of exciting things. And then there was a point in my career where I decided that I was looking for a little bit of a different work experience and wasn't really sure what my opportunities were, and started researching and applying to jobs. And I was fortunate enough to get hired at HubSpot about 4 years ago now, which is wild to me. But I went headfirst into that ecosystem and had a lot of opportunities to grow at HubSpot. And probably one of my favorite projects that I worked on there was being one of the automation specialists for their technical support team. So I was responsible for training all North American new hires and building the training program for the teaching them how to troubleshoot workflows, right? HubSpot's automations tool, which is neat because that automations has its fingers in everything else in HubSpot. So I started out by being like, yeah, this is great. I love workflows. I want to talk about these and know how to troubleshoot them. And then it was like, whoops, I have to also know about contact records, how to troubleshoot those. Oh, in lists. Oh, in this thing over here, emails. Because I like to say my beloved workflows are not always to blame. Sometimes it's the other tool's fault. But it's still my responsibility to figure out what's going on. So, and then following that journey along, I'm now work for Wendt Partners as your team's enablement specialist. So I do HubSpot administrative type roles. So setting up processes in Wendt's HubSpot that we're going to talk a little bit more about later here.
That's right. We're going to open the kimono and do some show and tell from our own HubSpot journey.
Yeah, is going to just really fit HubSpot to Wendt Partners business process a lot better than what just the out of the box features give you, which is so important as we deal with like trying to get more complex customers working in HubSpot. And I think that about brings us up to present day. I'd love to toss it back over to you, Doug.
Spectacular, Amelia. Thank you. Yes. So it's fascinating, I think, what we're about to do, because we're not just demoing and talking about what HubSpot can do. We're actually going to share what we are working through and doing with HubSpot and talking about how it might apply to other people's worlds. And I think that it's important for everybody here to start with the frame of mind that, the title of this event is Automating Your Business Processes with HubSpot. In order to automate business processes, we actually have to define business processes. And I think one of the big challenges for all of us is we all think we know our business processes. I mean, I own Wendt Partners. I think I know them pretty well. And then I discover, you know what, I really don't, or there were gaps that I hadn't thought about, or other team members were pointing out issues that hadn't even occurred to me. So knowing your business processes is the first step. In order to do that, especially since HubSpot is all about the customer experience, the customer journey, we actually have to know what the customer wants from us. And I know in our own business, that has changed dramatically. So to walk through this together for everyone's reference, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the business and the market. Then we're going to talk about the processes. Then we're going to talk about it in the context of HubSpot. So we're actually going to describe how we've changed our business to meet our market's needs. Then we're going to talk about how that influence changes in our processes, which Amelia has been flow charting and building out. And then we're going to look at how we address that in HubSpot. So I want to reiterate, the real experience here, the real journey is for all of us to better think through how can we serve our customer where they are, how they want to be served better, more efficiently, more effectively. And that is why, we talk about the flywheel model of HubSpot. And the whole idea of the flywheel is that if we send the right marketing message in a tailored manner, and we generate interest, and then we have a very well-managed and efficient sales cycle, and then someone becomes a customer and we serve them well, right, through proactive customer service, quick response to their concerns, their questions, all of those things. And then we ask them how we're doing, and we take their feedback and we bake that into our business, and we keep that process going. That's the idea of the flywheel. Okay. Customer satisfaction is the best way to generate new customer enthusiasm. So we're literally going to walk through our own journey on that. And in the process, we're really going to dig into some amazing things that HubSpot has made possible. Now, I want to point out two things on the technical side, and then we're going to dig into our own journey. Point number one is HubSpot, like all software applications, comes in different editions. We have people here who are on the free edition, the starter edition, the professional edition, the enterprise. We have participants who have different hubs. We are going to be exploring functions and capabilities that cross all those boundaries. So while most of what we talk about can probably be done in most hubs, a lot of this does depend on your subscription, and I just want to make sure that that's clear. A little bit of a disclaimer there. If you go into your hub and you're trying to figure out how to do something based upon today's discussion and it's not there, you may need to adjust your subscription. And so it's important to keep that in mind. It's also important to keep in mind that what we're trying to do is turn HubSpot from being HubSpot's product into being your solution. And I think that's another thing we all often forget. I know, because I spent a lot of my time in sales, people get excited about the product. It's a spectacular product. It's exciting. It's neat. It allows you to do things you could never do before. But remember, this is supposed to be your solution. And that's why it's important to start with your market, with your market situation. So Amelia, you've been on the Wendt Partners team now for how long?
6 months.
All right. Dun, 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 dun!
Yeah, good. And 6 months.
Thank you. Thank you. That's good to hear. Excellent. Employee satisfaction, also very important. So in that 6 months, how much has our business changed?
Massively. It's a little like a moving target. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I've got it. And then we look and I'm like, oh, wait, we got a new thing now. But every time like that new thing is coming down the pipe, it's in advance of whatever the direction of the market and the software is going. And I think what you just said there, Doug, about what even is our business process? You know, like sometimes I think I've got it and I'm not sure. Like no matter what tier of HubSpot you have, making sure that you know what your processes are, not to turn this away from an automation conversation, but is so important and valuable. And it's only going to cost you some time to try and figure that out. And computers, right, work in binary code. It's a 1 or a 0. Yes. There's no in between. So if you have these gray areas in your business process, absolutely, we can put nuance in your automation and all of that. And again, in the same way that as we've had discussions, as Wendt Partners offerings have evolved to best serve the clients, because client needs and HubSpot functionality has evolved in the last 6 months, because HubSpot's one of those things where I take a weekend off and I log back in and I say, where the heck did that button go?
Yes.
So that, you know, we need to be able to have that level of functionality, but also at the end of the day, it's like, okay, we need to say there are rules. That's how automation works, is we set up the rules. And I'm a very structured person that way. So I like it for that reason. But it is challenging if you don't have a clear vision and direction of how things should be functioning outside of HubSpot to define it in HubSpot. It can very quickly become a mess.
You nailed it. And I think I can give a very simple example that is a very common situation. Customer joins us as a HubSpot customer. They say, great, I want to be able to send targeted emails or create nurturing campaigns around the industry that my prospect is in. That's spectacular, but you darn well better make sure that A, that field is always filled out, and B, it's filled out correctly. You know, we can't automate a broken process. Well, we can, but all it does is create more broken dishes. The process goes back to the business itself, and it goes back to the data that we're collecting in that business. And this is another area where it's really important. If we don't have good data, we can't build a good process. So let me take a few moments and actually talk about, and I've got something I'm going to share here about how much our business has changed. So this is a graphic that we just came out with. In fact, we're adding it to our website and other resources as we speak. We call this our 4 lines of business. I use the term line of business to describe essentially a department in our company that is able to sell something to a customer without any other department's involvement. So, for example, a customer can buy HubSpot onboarding from Wendt Partners. So we have our HubSpot Solutions line of business. A customer can buy marketing and retainer-based services. That's from our Growth Solutions group. Now, if we rewound the company 9 months ago, that was the whole story. We had 2 lines of business. Do you want retainer services from our agency operation, or do you want HubSpot solutions from our HubSpot Solutions team? And then over the last 9 months, we started to realize that we needed to take some functions and break them out into other lines of business for 2 reasons. And this is, I give this example. So for those of you who are joining us for the webinar, I want you to start using this as a way of thinking about how much your own business has changed. Maybe you phased out products and added new products. Maybe you have a list of services that's organized one way, and now you realize maybe the market's moving in a different direction. Or maybe you've never really organized your services or products around industries, and now you realize that might be a good idea. The point is, we had to listen to our market feedback. And what happened is we had prospective customers and current customers saying, you know what? We just need technical services from your team. You know, maybe we're already on HubSpot. We've already onboarded. We are using it. We need your help with a technical issue. Or we need to build a new website on HubSpot. That's another big change we made as a company. A year ago, you could get a WordPress website built by Wendt Partners. Now we only build websites on HubSpot CMS. So we realized that our business model was completely out of date for what our customers needed and what our customers asked for. And if there's one thing I've learned in the last year, it's that customers will tell you what they want to buy. We have created new services, new offerings, new subscriptions, all just because customers said, could you please create this thing? I would like to spend some money on it. Okay. And so this model is what we've settled on. Now we are still, going through our own internal process of organizing the business around this. Amelia, how many conversations have we had about project managers versus account managers?
3 times a week at least, for many of those 6 months.
Yes. And so
and go back and forth.
Internal alignment, in case you all are wondering, like, what the heck are they talking about? In our retainer services, we assign an account manager who is really responsible for quarterbacking the engagement. Historically, in our other areas, we've assigned a project manager who has a different role. It's really specific to the delivery of the project, not the overall. There are subtleties, but I'm sure in everybody's company here, you can think of examples where the internal org chart and the market-facing needs aren't quite in alignment. And what I'm going to tell you is they're never going to be quite in alignment, but the key is you have to always keep adjusting both. Okay. You want to get them as aligned as possible. And probably there'll be a short period of time every year where you're like, we got it. They're now completely aligned. And that'll come just in time for the market to tell you you need to do something else. I have no idea what's coming next, but it's going to be something. So we had to first settle on a model that we thought was scalable enough that we could build our business around it. And that took 9 months of really aggressive transformative change to get to. Because of course, now that we have 4 lines of business, they need leaders, they need project managers and account managers, they need marketing and funding. Like, it changes how you run your company. So that is framework number 1. What is the market telling me I need? And then what do I have to do to transform my business to meet the market? Okay. Amelia, what did we then have to start doing to turn that into something we can work with in HubSpot?
Yeah. So once we had the lines of business pretty clearly defined, the next step was to understand the best way to track this sort of information. Long story short, we went ahead with custom objects for each of the lines of business, which allow us to use HubSpot to track not just to the point of sale, right, which is what it does out of the box for just about everybody here, but to track the delivery of the services. And then, spoiler alert, the renewal and ongoing serving of our clients, which is, unless you've got your head in the sand as a partner, I think it's pretty clear that's where partner agencies need to be going. Instead of looking at project end dates, and ending client relationships, probably looking at like, okay, well, why do people buy a new car? So it works, but they still have to take it to the mechanic. And guess what? Your CRM's the same way.
So you hit on something that I want to call out for the whole group. In experience after experience working with innumerable clients, we have learned that usually the biggest near-term revenue enhancement opportunities, in other words, how can we generate more sales tomorrow, right, come from one of 3 things: upsell, cross-sell, and next step sell. I'm going to put it in a different category, right, which is like subscription. It's, next step, right? We ourselves have been telling people to do that for years. And what I have learned is we had a lot of friction in our processes to make that difficult to do. We ourselves recognized we need to do better job at upsell, cross-sell, and next step sell. One of the reasons that happens is because it's a linear organizational structure. Typically, customer is marketed to, then they talk to sales, they buy something, now they're a customer, then their service or product is delivered and it goes out the physical or virtual backdoor of the business, and that's it. And to realize that at a certain stage in that customer relationship, there's a sales opportunity that needs to be regenerated, resurfaced to continue the virtuous circle. That is something that, again, I've been preaching that for years, but it is very difficult to thread that needle in real life because we're all busy in our certain functions You need to functionally organize a business in order for it to operate effectively, but we've got to connect those dots. And I think that's what we're going to dig into here, is showing how in HubSpot we're able to connect those dots. To do that, Amelia, you went ahead before going into HubSpot, and what did you start creating?
Yeah, so I created a lucid chart. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and see if everybody, all the hamsters and everything agree to let this work. And so basically I mapped out what this could look like, because although you're just having this discussion, now you can create custom objects directly in HubSpot through a beta. Previously, this could only be done using the API. So lookout worlds, the keys to the kingdom have been given. But we want to make sure that we're not creating extra objects for no reason and making a mess. Because I'm sure if you guys serve clients, you've seen CRM messes. So basically, this is me mapping out the sales process and then the associated objects and the automations that we can use to do this. So once a deal is closed won, that is a specific topic of what our deal stage for that is called agreement signed. One of the things that we actually are even able to do here is taking the sales process, because we had post-sale action. So after the agreement is signed, like more stuff has to happen, right? Initial calls, that kind of thing. All of that was being contained in the sales pipeline. So each of those stages were impacting sales forecasting, reporting, deal velocity charts, and all of that kind of thing. So if we can get those stages that are technically post-sale, or that intermediary gray area between the client said yes and like we actually got the money and started the service, right? Because there's that gap of time, and move it into its own space to have its own separate reporting. That is one of the reasons why we have the client engagement record, which we're able to create automatically. And that moves through the series of stages that happen there. And then from the client engagement record, which acts as this umbrella, as a way for us to say, here are all the services that we're offering to the specific client. Here's how they're going. This one might be done. These are the people responsible for these different services. All that kind of stuff that you want to be able to find at a glance lives up top here. And then each of the services are represented down below by their own individual custom objects, which assignment's a huge piece here. You know, trying to make sure that we can get our specialists assigned to them, so our folks know what's coming down the pipe to be getting started, and we're making sure that we're doing things in a timely manner, right? All of those things that if I'm speaking to agency partners or specialists, they're like, these are the things I do day to day. And then also considering, as we start to think about, now that we have individual objects that represent lines of business and services we're providing, what those next steps, the opportunities Doug was talking about, upsell, cross-sell, next step sell, might look like in building in notifications or automatic deal creation. So we can now say, all right, the growth solutions team is managing this, but they're about to be done with their most recent sell of this. And so we want to now push this back to sales. Make sure we've got that cross-departmental communication being handled automatically, so the right people have the right information at the right time, so that we can be not losing those opportunities, or, you know, letting people become unengaged or go dark.
And I want to emphasize one of the things that we're trying to do here, and we'll start looking at it in HubSpot. The reason that the engagement record in our case was important is because we deliver our services through those 4 lines of business. But to the client, it's one relationship between us and them for a period of time to achieve their goals. That we call a client engagement. And I think what we want to remember here is we're trying to, again, align the internal and the external together. And that's really what we've been focusing on in this process. So let's actually, let's talk about the tools in the toolkit that we have to customize and automate. Let's talk about that a little bit, and then we'll walk through the flow here. So Amelia, if you'll just go to the context drop down, and let's talk a little bit about the objects. We have this section called custom objects. So what we've done here is we've organized, again, custom objects, which is essentially new types of data in the system that are not supported just when it comes out of the box. We've created these new filing cabinets, or these new categories of data, and they are connected in the system to other objects in whatever way we see fit. It can be between a couple of objects, it can be between all of them. And so the client engagements is that container. Okay. And although we're in the services business, if you're in a product oriented business, similar logic applies. It's just in a different structure. And if you think about it, the one product that we sell is a client portal. Okay. So a HubSpot portal is a product. It has a price. You buy it. Now, it also has an expiration date, right? Your subscription term. There are a lot of other things associated with that product. What modules did you purchase? How many contacts are in your contact tiers for your Marketing Hub subscription? All of that information we need to track, essentially the way a product company would track products that you need to make sure are available for servicing or support. So we have a lot of clients in industrial or technology sectors that sell physical products, but they support them, they service them. They need to make sure that they have that information. We've done a similar thing with that portals object. And then we have our four lines of business. And actually, the important thing here is that custom objects essentially operate the way every other object in the database does. So we are basically building our business on the HubSpot platform. I want to talk a little bit about some of the other tools in the toolkit. So I'm going to take the screen for a few minutes, and then Amelia, we're going to come back to you to look into how those objects relate together.
Awesome.
Sound good?
Thanks. Sounds good.
So I want to make sure that everybody understands very briefly the range of tools that are available in the HubSpot platform to create a customized environment. Okay. So in here, I'm looking at a contact record. This is my specific contact record. And one of the things that HubSpot offers, in addition to custom objects, we have custom fields. We have the ability to create these, we call them sections, so that fields can be organized into different groupings. Okay. And we can determine which fields appear on what screen and for what type of user. Okay. So there's an enormous amount of power just in configuring how these screens work. In addition to that, there's an overview tab that allows us to select 2 or 3 items that we always want to see at the top of the screen. Okay. For example, if I go into a deal record, there are 3 pieces of information I always want to know. Here, I want to know the create date of the record, the last activity date, and what is their life cycle stage. And then it gives you summary information, but you can configure this as you see fit. In addition, on the right-hand side in HubSpot are these, you'll see these things that look, so like here, this is a company record, and this is saying that Doug is attached to the company Wendt Partners, but you'll see here, there's this little sales navigator icon, and it fits in a little box here. Okay. And we can act upon it. We can do some things. We can also view additional information. Okay. And it actually opens inside the screen. We call these CRM extension cards. So one of the things that we do with a lot of clients is we work with them to deploy a CRM, a collection of extension cards. Either we custom make them for the client's application, or a lot of the native integrations that are available in the HubSpot ecosystem are enabled through these extension cards. For example, we use DocuSign. And in addition to customizing the system to have that DocuSign connection, this is all automated. I'm actually able to generate a document that goes to Doug right from here. And inside HubSpot, I'm able to see where it stands. Did he receive it? Did he open it? Did he sign it? Is it completed? Is it countersigned? So every company can have a different set of objects on the right, or extension cards, different fields on the left. And in addition to that, another key tool in the toolbox is called filtered views. So every category of data in HubSpot has these views, these master views, and these are also completely configurable. I can determine what particular items I want to see in this sort of spreadsheet view or list view. I can filter that view against, literally, I've only filtered this one against one criteria, but I could filter it against hundreds of criteria to give myself the ability to look at just the information I want to see. And that's organized into these different tabs, and the tabs are also configurable. So there's a certain message here I want to communicate. There are lots of tools in the toolbox. This is an incredibly flexible system, but in order to use those tools effectively, we have to map our business process. And that's what you saw in Amelia's chart, in her flow charts. She is harmonizing language. We have a client who just joined us, and they realized that every department uses slightly different language for very much the same thing. And so when they're all coming together in one platform, now we need to harmonize that information. And so that's part of what's happening there. We're helping the client better understand and streamline their business in the process of implementing the enterprise application. So with that in mind, Amelia, let's take a look at how we've started to turn this into automation and action to make our customer experience better.
Absolutely. So obviously, you guys all know what records look like. This is that client engagement record. On the left-hand side, you can see there's a lot of information here. So although one of my more recent soapboxes is we don't need to copy every property to and from every single record, because they should be in the appropriate places. Sometimes that is helpful, especially when we talk about trying to create an umbrella record. So you guys saw my flow chart. If you want to see what the workflow information looks like, let's see. I've got a whole folder here, client engagement, sales automation. These are all of the workflows that contribute to the process that is drawn in that flow chart that I've created. And so an example might be creating the client engagement, right? Would be the first thing. And actually the automation itself is very simple, which is kind of one of the funny things about this is it seems like it would be very complex, but each individual automation is nothing too crazy to actually set this process up. Once, like I said, the custom object schemas have been defined, so those objects exist in your account. And then it's basically duplicating this for each of the lines of business so far. So create the engagement first, because there's a time element to automation we have to think about. And then for each of these lines of business, I've got, assignment reminders and that kind of thing. And I have made some conscious strategic decisions to separate these out into different workflows. Could we put this in one monster automation? Yes, totally. Do I think that's the best choice for what we're doing? No, I don't, because it would be frequent that we would sell multiple lines of business. Hopefully, if Doug and Pat and his team are doing things right, which they usually are, to a single client. So placing it all in a single workflow that's like some monster, that you have to zoom out 45 times to see the whole thing, is going to force us into having to do more automation work than as opposed to allowing a deal record to enroll in two workflows at the same time so we can create the custom objects for the two lines of business we've sold them. That makes sense. Yeah, and then on each of these objects, kind of what to Doug's point, what he was saying previously is, yes, you can customize the sidebar. You can also customize the sidebar at enterprise level for different teams. So the HubSpot team that we have may see one version of a sidebar here, whereas our client project managers may see a different version of the sidebar here, which is just another step in that journey to customizing it for your business and making sure that the properties that certain teams are leveraging most often and are most important to them are the easiest for them to see. Seems like a no-brainer, but I think you and me and everyone has all been in client accounts before where we've been like, why is this property the top thing that you're seeing here? Just being thoughtful about that stuff.
Absolutely. So one thing I want to really emphasize is the other advantage of the approach that we're taking here is we're giving each team essentially their own view into the HubSpot system, right? So if I work in the Growth Solutions team, I'm able to focus on just the information that's important to me. I'm able to track those activities, tie them together, and at the same time, cross-reference with everything else that's going on with this client. I recently had a conversation with a prospective client who was asking about service ticketing, which is a service hub function in HubSpot. And the discussion really centered on the fact that, yes, it's great to be able to track tickets in HubSpot. That's certainly the case, but the real power is to be able to see all the context. Because oftentimes when a customer has a question, looking at the ticket only tells you what the customer asked. Being able to see what are the current engagements that we're working on, what departments are involved, who are the people, where do things stand, what is on time, what is running late, where are we? Now I can gain context to answering that question. I would say in our own experience, probably at least 30 to 40% of the questions we get from customers actually have an answer that is embedded in other activities, communications, and records already in HubSpot. Having that information at our fingertips completely changes how we make decisions and how we provide customer information and answer their needs back. Another thing that I'll point out here is that we've gone so far as to structure things in the system to make sure that we can auto assign things to our different teams. So we have color-coded client service teams, and based upon that team, we've created that functionality in the system, and that allows us to then say, great, here are the team assignments that go to that. So we're really talking about like resource management automation as well. Keep going, Amelia. Yeah, nailed it.
This is the workflow that does that for one of those teams.
Absolutely.
So we're enrolling based on the person that's assigned, right? They're the account manager. And then I'm doing some copying here because I want the account manager to be someone that's flagged on the client engagement record. So we know who the main points of contact for each line of business project is from that umbrella record. Then from there, we just go ahead and say, well, if it's one of these people, it'll be a certain color. And then that allows us to easily fill those properties. So now I can do things like report on how, successful Team Aqua has been in completing their projects on time.
Right. Yep. And what was the field that we just realized in our most recent working session that we need to create and start tracking?
Yeah. So I think it was, what did I end up naming it? I called it extension reason. So we have properties on our implementation and onboarding related service line, HubSpot Solutions, called actual end date and expected end date. So anyone who does a project that does have an end date, right, sort of stepping away from that ongoing model, knows that sometimes it ends on time and sometimes it doesn't. What this allows us to do is now say, here's the amount of time we're going over by, if we are. And now we're going to prompt the specialist to fill in a somewhat generic, but a reason why. And was it something on our end? Was a technical project unrelated to our implementation delayed that either we were or were not responsible from, right? So we can start to understand whether there are external vendors that are slowing us down or what the most common thing is that causes projects not to finish on time, and come up with some different levers we can pull to try and solve that.
So let's talk about some of the use cases this allows us to expand things to. So when we typically and then the question is, why is that important to do in HubSpot? Like, why would we expand our use case for HubSpot beyond the sales department? Let's talk a little bit about that. We have a sales hub, we have a service hub, right? What is the piece in the middle of the customer experience? Amelia's like, I think you're asking me a trick question.
Yeah, between Sales Hub and Service Hub, likely the operations aspect.
Right, and that's what we're building in is the client engage. In our case, that's client engagements, right? We want to be able to tie those pieces together. And in order to do that, in order to say, based upon this sales activity, great, now we have this service process that follows through. We need to be able to have the information on how things are going. Now, if you're a product-driven company, you will probably be doing this with ERP and using ERP integration, which is another whole discussion that we could have, and that's an important one because HubSpot is a very, very robust platform to support integrations with third-party products. But the important thing is it needs to be modeled in a way that works for your business and for your customer experience. So we've actually changed one of the roles in our company. We've literally essentially disbanded and recreated a new department called our client success team. And we've done something very different with that team. Amelia, let's talk about when do we assign a client success specialist to a client?
Yeah, at the beginning of the sales process. They are there through that whole journey as we're doing discussions, sometimes with our friends like Chris Moore at HubSpot, to be scoping projects. And that way they are the person that's read in on what's going on, and they're aware of all of the notes and things that they've been taking during the sales process, because they will at some point when sales is done the good work that they do, go ahead and sales steps away and the CSS continues to manage that client engagement from kind of the handoff to the service for each of the lines of business. Yes. So they're the informed individual that's ready to try to make sure that we're connecting the dots as efficiently as possible between those two things. Anyone who's ever been the sales rep or been the one receiving things from the sales rep know that that's just it's a challenging process to distill all the work that you've done to sell translated into the person who's going to deliver the service. So.
Absolutely. And so we've had to make human resource decisions. We've had to change job descriptions. We've created a completely new role that didn't exist before. We had to bake that into our business process. And we've had to explain to clients why it's important, because one of the things that we do is now when someone signs a contract with us, we actually have a priorities call, which comes before the kickoff call, which is led by that client success specialist. And the reason that's important is it's all about that handoff. And the reason I recognize that isn't because I'm the owner or brilliant or I have some knowledge that nobody else does. It's because clients told me, and because team members told me, this is a process we need to rethink. So again, the real message here, I think, of the conversation is almost not just automating, but evolving. If I were to rename this event, I would say evolving your business processes with HubSpot. I probably wouldn't, because everyone say, like, what is evolving your business processes? But now that we're in the conversation, that is really the thing that we're doing. Okay. We always are finding situations in which we're working with the client to rethink how they've done things before. I often say, when you implement a new CRM platform in your business, this is a perfect opportunity, a perfect moment in time to ask yourself, is the way we've been doing it the way we want to continue doing it? Because there's an important disconnect issue here. Everyone gets excited about new technology. It's like the wineskin, right? It's the new wineskin. But if you pour the old wine in, you're still going to have old wine. Okay. In order to make things truly better, we want to understand both how we can apply new technology to the current state of affairs and how we can evolve the business to take advantage of all that the technology offers. We weren't in a position at Wendt Partners to take advantage of all that Service Hub survey capability has to offer, because we hadn't modified our business processes to support that. If I'm going to send customers a customer satisfaction survey, I don't want to just randomly be like, well, it's the 15th, let's send out the surveys. That'll guarantee very low engagement. And it won't really achieve any meaningful objectives. The point isn't the survey. The point is what you do with the survey. Amelia, let's talk a little bit about, like, how does the workflow engine then make it possible to take that input? Because we were just talking with a client, right, who was using SurveyMonkey, and they're like, can HubSpot support customer satisfaction surveys? And we said, well, yes, it can. But the real question is, what happens after the survey is filled out? Thoughts on, like, how does the workflow engine and the automation in HubSpot change what we do with that survey result?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have feedback surveys in HubSpot. They are separate from HubSpot forms, which, because I've seen people try to use HubSpot forms like SurveyMonkey, and it just doesn't really work. But basically you need to know, I like the customer focused approach for surveying. Basically, I want to make sure that I'm sending the right questions to the right person at the right time. Right? Pretty easy.
Yes.
And using HubSpot's feedback tool, we can certainly do that. But one of the problems was, well, on a HubSpot solutions record, I actually have multiple customer POCs associated with that. Like, okay, I'm implementing a project for you, probably multiple hubs. Like, it's not going to be one. I'm not going to just talk to Doug at Wendt Partners. I'm going to talk to the sales VP. I'm going to talk to the marketing director. Right. So now, who do we survey was like sort of the first question that you need to overcome. Do we survey all these people? Do we send them different information? That kind of thing. And then all of that has to happen before you can even set up a feedback survey in HubSpot. And then on the automation side of things, the way that this process is going to help is it allows us to leverage pipelines, which is another piece of the puzzle here.
Go for it. Let's pop one up. Yeah, I think pipelines are really an unsung hero in the technology.
Here are our client engagement object, and we've placed it in a pipeline. And so pretty straightforward, but this used to be part of our sales pipeline, right? And now it's its own pipeline. Once you have stages, basically a pipeline is for tracking a process, right? And people are very familiar with the sales process, which is again why you need to define, taking us all the way back, right? You need to have defined processes before you can do a lot of this stuff. Because if you can't give me stages, how am I supposed to build this for you? So this allows us to, instead of saying the 15th of every month, let's go ahead and send Doug Wendt and say, hey, how we doing? It allows us instead to see, as the client success specialist, that job title that Doug was just speaking about, is moving this engagement through these different stages. Like, maybe they've been in service delivery for one of our static date services, right? So a project that will be completed. at a certain time for 30 days. We want to be able to trigger the survey to go out to them after 30 days of service delivery that client engagement has been there, which is a much more customized, much more timely outreach to the correct person. Little plug for association labels, right? Who's your main POC to the correct person, instead of just being like, yep, everybody gets it on the 15th. So it allows you to have that more customizability.
So let's actually take a look at an association label. You can probably pull up any of our deal records and let everyone know this is another tool in the toolkit that I think is just enormously powerful. So the way associations work is they provide us with a way of identifying the relationship between an individual or a record and another record. And the important thing is this may be different depending on the deal. A lot of our clients work in very complex B2B sectors. And, let's say I'm selling engineering and testing solutions for bridge and infrastructure projects. In one deal, okay, Doug Wendt may be the chief engineer. In another deal, he may be a consulting engineer. And another deal, he might not be involved in at all. And we need to know that on the case-by-case basis. So in this case, we use a label called primary account contact. Also, those of you who sell through channels, okay, we sell through a channel. One of our channels is our HubSpot partnership. So when we work with HubSpot sales representatives, we actually mark that is the rep associated with that deal, so we can manage and track our sales related communications and our channel activities. And we can actually say, how many deals have we worked on? How did they disposition? We can also run automations to impact this information. So associations help us to model our business process as effectively as possible. Another thing that I'll point out is, again, similar to a lot of companies that sell into very complex B2B sectors, if we have custom objects available, in a lot of those scenarios, we'll create another object called projects. And projects, let's say that you're an engineering firm and you are selling your engineering services as a consulting engineer. So you're going to be a subcontractor to the prime contractor. And you don't know which prime contractor is going to win the project, to rebuild LaGuardia Airport. You can tell them on the New Yorker. Okay. So there are 5 consortia that are bidding to do the airport rebuild project, but it's one project. You're working on multiple deals and multiple sales cycles, and you're putting your best foot forward with all the different the 5 different prime contractors in their consortia, but your goal is to be a winner regardless of how the game ends up, being played. With custom objects, we're able to model and track that activity, and we can tie that back to that one project. So in a lot of complex B2B, the kind of automation that we're talking about, for example, hey, when the Port Authority here in New York announces they've chosen the contractor for that project, we can make that change on the project level and generate notifications and follow-throughs with all of the individual deals associated with it, just as an example.
And as another plug for association labels, just yesterday, very common business use case. Someone asked me if I could help them to create a list so that we could send an email to everyone who is an active client of their company, right? And so, okay, well, what does that mean? Anyone with an open deal or a closed one deal within the last certain time period. But the problem is, right, we have many contacts on those singular deals because people are involved. In our use case, right, we have HubSpot reps there. I don't really want to email those HubSpot reps and be like, hey, how are things going with this company that's not HubSpot? So we use the association labels to build this list. And so, for example, you can see here in the list tool, any associated label with the deal of primary account contact. So we're able to pull in everyone who is the actual main client contact on the deal and not all those HubSpot folks and spam in their inbox.
So a lot of different parts here, but what we're trying to do is architect the right solution. Amelia, where do you think all of this automation and process, mapping is heading? Where do you think a year from now, HubSpot customers will be?
That's a great question. Some of the really exciting additions to workflows recently. I mean, obviously with Ops Hub, they rolled out a bunch of stuff with trying to do data cleanup, right?
Right.
Reorganizing phone numbers. That tool, if anyone's been in it, I'm sorry, HubSpot folks, but is pretty, it has like those couple very simple use cases. We'll fix a phone number, we'll change the order of these, another numeric field. I think getting that further and further, because we've had this discussion multiple times today where we've been like, well, if the data is not clean, we can't do X. And that is like the core of it, in my opinion. Like it all comes back to the CRM. So the ability to do that, I would love if anyone from HubSpot is listening right now. Meg Legg, I know you're the product expert on workflows. Hit me up. I would love for us to do some more with ticket workflows, especially although now we have custom objects, which does give us more customizability. Previously, many solutions were, hey, customer, you want to track something that's not a deal, a contact, or a company, put it in a ticket record, go ahead, stick it in there, we'll put it in a pipeline. But the limitation is it's very challenging to copy values from ticket properties, basically back up the chain into a contact. There's a lot of limitations around ticket-based enrollment criteria and all of that. So custom objects now solve that problem. But if we talk about those customers on lower tiers, so I think that kind of stuff, and then looking at more customizability with centered on a date and timing flexibility and the ability to enroll based on property changes, and other things like sales events, sequence actions. A lot of that stuff is starting and it's very exciting. But just getting the workflows tool to have even more capabilities built in, which I think they've already attacked pretty early on if you're a more technical point of contact and you're able to leverage the webhooks action in workflows. Usually if someone's talking to me and they're saying, well, there's a HubSpot limitation, it can't do it. That's when I say, okay, let's look outside the system. And HubSpot gives you a lot of ability to leverage things outside the system and then also push things out of the system, either using workflows or the API. So like the solutions are out there. It's just finding the right group of people who can help you enact them or figuring out what the right fit for your business is. So.
And I want to key into two things that you talked about and alluded to there. So first of all, if everyone doesn't know, HubSpot's annual conference is coming up in a couple of weeks in early September, the Inbound Conference. And it's going to be very interesting to see what the focus is this year. But I'm excited to see where HubSpot goes in terms of making even more customization around your business possible. Clearly, that is the theme. That has been the theme now over the last few years. Customers are looking to build more and more their solution on HubSpot, and HubSpot has made it possible to do that. Now, one question that was asked earlier, and we'll move into the Q&A. I saw we have a couple of questions. So I'm going to address both the question that was asked earlier and a question that popped up now. So thank you, Peyton. So first of all, somebody asked, what does it take to create one of those extension cards? Can we do it ourselves? So the answer is, if you have a qualified developer who goes through the process of learning the HubSpot technology stack well enough to do the job right, sure, you could do it yourself. There are an enormous amount of capabilities that a non-developer can access in HubSpot. That list is growing all the time, but what we always learn is just because you can doesn't mean that you're qualified to make it a should. In the example that Amelia alluded to earlier, custom objects are both very powerful and very easy to set up a little bit off. And by the way, I know that because I've done that. Amelia has said, why did you set up the object that way? You're absolutely correct. I wasn't really thinking it through. So, these are very, very powerful tools. And we want to respect the power of those tools. So it definitely takes a qualified person. At the same time, HubSpot is a company that goes out of its way to make tools accessible to the client, to the customer. You are the customer. As much as you want to, we certainly want to make that available to you. Another question was about SMS automation. So SMS automation in HubSpot is supported by a couple of vendors that provide third-party SMS platforms. The reason that there are more than one and that HubSpot just hasn't sort of done its own is because the purpose of the SMS has a huge impact on how it should be configured. Some companies, for example, B2C companies, really focus on large-scale SMS automation from a marketing perspective. You signed up for this list to get, know when the latest sale is. you and 500,000 other people are going to get an update on that sale, right? That's large scale SMS broadcasting, as opposed to B2B, where it tends to be more, I need to be able to create one-on-one SMS messages between me and my decision maker in this deal. I may want to be able to pull from a library of automations or sequences for that, but the process is very different. Typically, SMS technologies focus around one or the other. And so we provide a couple of options, but they work very, very well. We ourselves actually are a Ring Central company. So we use Ring Central's native SMS, which also is supported by HubSpot. So there are an enormous range of ideas and potentials here that I'm excited to explore. I know we've only hit the tip of the iceberg. I think we have time for one or two more questions. So if you want to type them in the box, feel free. We'd love to take your questions. So I see we have another question about what is the role of HubSpot payments in all of this? So a lot of people have really started to explore the payments question. Amelia, what are some of the things that we can do with HubSpot payments as a tool that we can use for automating or reducing friction in the customer experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. So anyone who's ever worked with point of sale, right, knows that like, where's the place that we want to make things the easiest for the customer? And it's that part where they give us the money, right? Above all else, the way the business functions well is collecting money. You do it every day at a cash register when you hand your card or your cash over the, the till. And so HubSpot Payments allows you to create links that are either for one-time purchases, or you can do like a rolling, the correct words escaping me right now, but basically like a monthly payment. And it allows you to embed those in your different HubSpot resources. So it lets you, instead of previously with HubSpot quotes, right, someone would sign a quote. That is not Amelia, the person who's selling knitted hats, getting the money. It's just the person telling me, yeah, I'm going to pay you the money for your knitted hats. Allowing them to take that extra step and actually pay shortens all that time to delivery. In this example with the hats, right? The moment they say yes, they sign, they pay, I see the payment, I accept it, I ship their hat out, right? Even faster time for the customer to be able to receive what they're looking for. And the same thing's true for client services, right? Because we've already discussed there's a lot of work that happens between agreement signed and payment sent. So trying to reduce that friction. I will also note that prior to HubSpot's native payment links, there are a lot of third-party solutions out there through the marketplace. So if HubSpot payments links, which were the big shiny thing last year at Inbound around this time, aren't meeting your needs for whatever you might be trying to charge for, your pricing structure or whatever, there are options that integrate with HubSpot to or that, have different percentage offerings for when you accept credit cards and debit payments and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of choices to, quote, get the money, I think, in an effort to continue to support our B2C market in HubSpot.
I will also conclude on this point by saying that one of the things we're about to roll out in our own use is payment links that are tied to specific pre-priced products and services. And if there's one thing that I think we all benefit from moving toward, and it doesn't matter, this is not limited to B2C or even to simple B2B, it is creating more pre-packaged products and services that people can buy with the click of a button. I'm always astounded at how much they will. And so we're looking forward to rolling that out as well. I know we are just a minute away from 1 p.m. We promised we would end on time. Amelia, it has been an absolute pleasure to spend this hour with you. Thank you so much for not only sharing your knowledge, but just bringing really amazing ideas to the table as we explore this topic together on understanding your business process and then automating that process in the HubSpot platform.
Thanks, Doug. And thank you everybody for your questions and for listening to me stumble through.
There was no stumbling. If anything, I just wish we could have gone on longer. We'll have to do a second session together.
If the people want it.
All right. If the people want it. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We know that your time is valuable. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Keep an eye out for the recording and for the invitation to our next webinar. Our focus on these web events continues to grow. We will also be sharing updates from Inbound in a couple of weeks. Stay tuned. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.